Welcome to Your County on Community 7 Television. I'm Veis and I'm your host. Each month we look at a different aspect of what's going on in Yellowstone County. This month we're very excited to have Jeff Martin with us. Jeff is a clerk and recorder of Yellowstone County. Jeff, thanks so much for stopping by to visit with us.
Thanks for having us, Shoots.
All right. Hey, before we get into clerk and recorder and what you're doing down there and the papers whizzing around and flying everywhere and files going this way and that way, tell us a little bit about you. Give us some of your background, some of your history before you came to become the clerk and recorder in Yellowstone County.
Sure. I was appointed by the Board of County Commissioners in 2011. Prior to that, or before that, I was in the real estate business. I held a broker's license, was the broker of Roger Beater Real Estate, later became Jeff Martin Real Estate, and had been doing that. I've had a license for 18 years. Prior to my real estate experience between college and getting into real estate, I worked for a large recruiting firm in several different cities between here and Washington State.
All right, very good. And what kind of were you kind of interested in clerk and recorder? I imagine as a real estate career you had dealt with them a little bit and what they did, but I guess maybe I should ask it this way. What did you think the office was going to be like, and what was it actually when you actually got in there and started working there?
You know, Tony Nave was the clerk and recorder for 16 years before he retired in 2011. Nobody expected the position to come open. I was approached to entertain the idea. I did quite a bit of research, and I knew it was vital to the real estate industry. It's the backbone of the real estate industry, the financial lending industry locally, and I knew it was important. And the more research I did, I knew that's something I'd probably be pretty interested in.
Sure. All right. So it seems pretty self-explanatory when you say the clerk and recorder, but give us a real overview of what you guys do day in and day out in your office.
You know, you say it's pretty obvious, but on the street, most people don't know what the clerk and recorder really does. The clerk portion of it is you're the secretary of the Board of County Commissioners. You're in charge of all the records of the county commissioners, running the meetings, noticing meetings, keeping good, clean records, allowing access to the public to make sure they can find what decisions the commissioners made, and that's the clerk portion. The recording portion, specifically deals with real estate transactions, the real property records of Yellowstone County. Include deeds, any transaction you have, ownership records, access, subdivision plats, and things like that. On top of that, the clerk and recorder wear several different hats, in each county all throughout the state. We also serve as a branch of the State Vital Records Office, so we issue birth and death certificates. In Yellowstone County, the clerk and recorder is also the county surveyor, so we'll do a lot of reviews of surveys, subdivision plats, anything in any subdivision or anything that someone wants to split property, we'll deal with that. And then in some cases, in many cases, the clerk and recorder statewide is also the chief financial officer of their county. Yellowstone County several years ago decided to create its own finance department, but there's still some lingering responsibilities that go with that. So sure.
It's a pretty big umbrella that you guys have.
Very big umbrella.
That you go under there. With that big umbrella and all of the different roles that you have, talk to us a little bit about what are some of the technologies that you guys are using, and how has that changed even in the tenure that you've been in the office? I'm sure quite a bit. So what are some of those technologies, and where did you start from, and where are you at today?
You know, Tony Nave, like I said, served 16 years, and he did a fantastic job. He turned the office over in great shape. But before he told me, one of the reasons that he was choosing to retire at the time he did was he didn't want to take the next step with technology, And I knew coming in there's a lot that needed to be done. We've done a lot in the last 10 years. We started a new recording system, which we've had up and running since 2012. One of the most important things, our records, people don't maybe quite understand, but the records we have or have had for years and years, these are the original paper documents from when the county was first being created in, say, 1883. Those are the original documents. So we had to digitize those documents, back them up on servers. All the documents can be searched right now or previously through microfilm. Well, microfilm's a thing of the past. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to maintain, and that's the only record we have. So, throughout the last 10 years, we've digitized a lot of those records. The tricky part of that is not only did we have to digitize them, we had to make them searchable and accessible.
Sure.
So now, instead of having to come necessarily, right down to our office to search for all these records, someone can get on their home PC or home computer and do some property research right at home, and those can be indexed and searchable there. The biggest improvement we've made as far as technology goes is we've allowed for what's called electronic recording. So title companies, when you go to a title company and closing your house, and there's documents that need to be recorded. You refinance, you're dealing with banks from all over the nation. They have to record documents in our office. That can now be done electronically, whereas in the old days, or I shouldn't say old days, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it would have to be mailed in. It would take several days to accomplish. Title companies have to walk down documents, and we'd have to manually do them. Now everything's in front of us on a computer. It's digitized already. We index it, and it becomes available. That's probably the biggest thing that we've done in the last 2 or 3 years to make the office more accessible. Another thing we've done is, like I mentioned, microfilm. Chicago Title approached us a couple years ago, and Chicago Title is the biggest title company in the world. And a lot of their warehouses are still done with paper documents. I can't imagine the real estate footprint that they have around the nation. I think they're wise, and they're trying to realize, hey, wait a second, we need to shrink our footprint and become more digitized. But they rely on local clerk and recorders, every county across the nation, to have that digitized and ready for them. So they approached us kind of a trial run in the state of Montana, and they said, hey, if you'll give us access to your records, which we protect and they're important to us, if you give us access to those records, we will digitize those for you.
Wow.
And we will allow a software product. We'll go together and have a software product that people can come in and do manual online searches in our office without even touching the microfilm anymore. So in the last 10 years, we've become almost entirely digitized.
Yeah.
Just last Thursday, and that's on the land record portion of our office. Just last Thursday, we had a group leave that had been there for a month from Minnesota, and they've just got done digitizing all of our commissioner proceedings back to 1883.
Wow.
So by, say, maybe 1st of September, no longer we have to come into our office. You can access all the commissioner proceedings from day one of Yellowstone County. The records aren't being touched. We're going to keep them, but we can preserve them that way, and they're more accessible.
Sure. What about on the vital records piece? Am I still going to have to come in and get that piece of paper? Or, I mean, you know, okay, whatever comes along and I need to produce a birth certificate to show that, you know, I was born, and I need that paper document. What strides are being made to handle that electronically? And I don't imagine I can print out a birth certificate that's valid. So talk to us about vital records, where are we at with those, and where that might be going in the future.
You know, that's always a struggle. It can be difficult in some situations. We're a branch of the state office, and so we can issue these, the birth and death records. We have to abide by state law as far as what kind of identification you need and things like that. So to say you can just order them online and print them off, that's not the case. With everything going on with identity theft and things like that, we got to take it very seriously. But there's a way. If you live out of state, you live out of county, you can fill out a mail-in request form, send the proper identification, the payment, and we usually can turn those around within 24 hours. Now, I know I got my birth certificate. I was born in Washington, D.C. It took 6 to 8 weeks. We probably can get these out in the state of Montana within a couple days. But traditionally, most people come down to the office, you know, fill out the proper paperwork, which is very short. I mean, it's a small form. Have the identification, and we can turn them around in 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure. All right. I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I kind of want to get into it a little bit more. You talked about the fact that you guys have paper records that go back to, you know, the 1880s and stuff like that. What kind of things do you need to do to make sure that paper copy of those old records are? I'm assuming you're keeping those even though they're digitized with some of those older paper copies. What kind of things do you need to do to make sure that paper is not completely disintegrating and just wastes away?
Right. No, that's a fair question. You know, we've for years and years we've maintained them to a great standard. We'll continue to do so. They're in books. We try to keep the public from accessing too much and touching them, and because that becomes an issue. And the only thing we can really do is get them in an electronic format. You know, we've been really diligent of having several ways to back them up. We obviously have the original records. Yeah. We have several servers with backups. We have a recording system with a server on a third party. I mean, they're in a safe environment. but yet something that staff just needs to take very seriously, and they do. There's great pride in our staff, and they make sure you would have trouble accessing some documents without us knowing. And certain staff members making sure you're handling them correctly.
Sure, absolutely. So I know one of the things that you used to be able to recognize when you walked in the clerk and recorder's office was all of the people sitting in the back room sorting through the documents that are there. The bigger the county, probably the bigger the room and the number of people that are in there sorting to it. Given all of the technology that you talked about and all the digitizing that you get done, is that something you see in your office anymore, or are people just doing their research out of the office?
Well, within the last 18 months with this electronic recording coming on, we've seen a lot less paper copies. Everything's done digitized. Mix in COVID, we've seen less traffic than maybe we normally would. On top of that, some of the oil and gas industry people that might come in research, we haven't seen as much activity there. But it's hit or miss, but it's definitely been down with how much access you can get from home.
Sure.
And in turn, the title companies now have access, and they've chose to maybe do a little bit more research on site than having. There was at times, certain times a year, where you'd almost have a title person from a title company in the office, several hours a day, and that's diminishing as we talk.
So do you think it's as part of, like you talked about, well, there's COVID precautions and social distancing and masking, and well, if I can just do it from home from my computer, I'm better off doing it that way. Do you think some of that can just continue to translate? I can sit in home and do this just as well as I can sit in the office and do this, so why do I have to schlep down to the courthouse to get all of this?
Absolutely. I mean, the industry's changing. It's become the new norm. There's not... Most people don't have an interest or have a knowledge of what they're really looking for. So the people that are in the industry that can access it from an office saves time, saves money. There's no question that's become the new norm, and it'll continue to be that way.
Sure. All right. Absolutely. If I'm at home myself, and I don't work at the title company. I don't have a background in real estate. Any of that stuff, but I'm curious about that stuff. How would I go about accessing some of the land records that are kept at the clerk and recorder?
Well, the first thing I'd encourage you to do is call the office and let us know what you're looking for. And unless you're in the industry and doing it frequently, there's specific indexing and queries that you'd have to understand in order to find your document.
Sure.
So make sure you give us a call. If you go to our website, there's a document search engine that you can get on, and you can query what you're looking for. If you do find the document, there's a cost to it, and you can download that right to your computer and download your deed, your mortgage, your deed of trust, any easements, accesses, subdivision plats, whatever you wanted to do. You can download that right to your computer and keep that in a file. For the frequent users, we allow for a subscription service, and we've got one of the least. We charge. It's a pretty good deal. So for $100 a year, you have unlimited search capabilities in Yellowstone County. So if you're sitting at home and a good example might be an appraiser. They're constantly accessing our records to do appraisers, find out exactly what they're appraising. For $100, they have unlimited access with Yellowstone County.
Yeah. What role would your office play if I pull that deed and I go out and it looks like my neighbor's fence might be on my property, and I go talk to my neighbor and he's like, oh no, it's not. What role is the clerk and recorder's office going to play in any sort of land dispute that's out there?
Well, you described that perfectly, because that's exactly what usually happens.
Yeah.
Your fence is on my property, and the neighbor says, no, it's not. So inevitably they come to our office and they try to figure out what we can do to help. Is we can pull out the subdivision plat, locate the pins, or at least give them an idea of where the pins might be. In most circumstances like that, we'll refer them to a surveying company where they're going to come out and find the property pins, give them a good understanding exactly where their property boundary is. The misconception is that everybody has a property pin and it's super, you just walk out in your front yard and there's that, some of those during construction or during time, those can be buried, several feet, several inches underground, or they can move, and a surveyor can come out and reset the pins and kind of show you exactly where your fence line should be.
All right. So then, once that surveyor goes out and does that survey, that's going to be the gospel part of it at that point. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We hope.
I don't. We probably can't go too far in that route.
Right. Yeah,
we only have a few minutes left.
Yeah, there's a rabbit hole there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. If I need to come down to your office and get some documents, what should I bring with me? What do I need to know about coming down to your office and bringing document and requesting documents? What do I need to bring with me if I do that?
You know, the way we index and the way we query is through your legal description. Most people know their address, obviously, but that's not how land records work. They're done through legal descriptions. Legal description can be found on your tax record. If you go to the county website and do a property search through the tax records, it'll bring up your legal description. So that's really important that they understand their legal description. Of course, if they come down, you have an address. You know how you own property, how you own title, whether it's a corporation, by an individual, whatever. We can help you find it. Sure. But if you know the proper way, if you're at home looking for certain records on your property, legal description is imperative in how you hold title.
All right. And I'm assuming you could find out some of that stuff online before you ever even actually came down. I think you can search by your name and get the legal description.
Right.
Yeah.
Yellowstone County's got a pretty vast website.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people won't use it very often, so
Yeah.
it's always new to people. But yeah, most things you're able to find online, or at least get to the right office to be able to ask the right questions.
I know in my work, I also use the Montana Cadastral website a ton to do that, and that's always very helpful to find stuff, and it's relatively easy to search and find things that way.
Right, for sure.
But I'm assuming it's just a duplicate of what you provide to them.
Yeah, we have a GIS department, and in fact, this last legislative session, the GIS, state GIS is growing. In fact, on July 1st, we're going to raise our recording fees, and the increase is going to go to the state GIS fund. And that correlates directly to interactive mapping and things along those. We have our own GIS team, and those they layer on top of each other. So you can either use our GIS interactive mapping site or Cadastral.
All right.
Cadastral, you'll just get access to property all over the state, where Yellowstone County is specific to this county.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that relationship. How does your office interact with GIS? Are you sending them stuff every day or once a week, and what do they provide back to you as well?
You know what? They take our records, everything that we record, and most importantly, subdivision plats and surveys where there's property splits. They have full access to our records. Obviously, they take that and put them into their software system, so we can have so the public can access it and find out exactly where their property boundaries are and things like that. But yeah, there's full access, and we work together quite frequently. I access GIS all the time, and vice versa. They're always accessing my records.
Sure, absolutely. Is it helpful to you as the clerk of the county commission, and they have a process to do land subdivision? You kind of see that stuff coming before it actually comes to your office, and maybe pull the engineer or developer aside and say, hey, I saw this, and I can tell you this is going to be a problem going forward, so you might want to fix that before it ever gets to my office.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically what will happen if someone's going to go through subdivision review, we're going to get a draft of what their plans are. We work really closely with all these engineering firms. We see their work all the time. We have good relationships. So before it would ever get to the Board of County Commissioners or even the City Council, it's pretty wrapped up tight. And we'll work with them to make sure it's done appropriately, it's done legally, and everything, everything, all the, T's are crossed, I's are dotted before it even gets to a local government decision.
Yeah, have you seen, I'm sure you're, used to working with a lot of the local firms, and they probably know how things are supposed to be. Do you see other firms coming in from, across the country, and they're just going to do it the way they've always done it, and that's just not going to work in Yellowstone County? Very
rarely do we see any firms that are outside the state of Montana. Most of the firms that we work with we're very familiar with. You'll see some firms from, Bozeman, outlying communities that are close to Yellowstone County, but for the most part, it's local firms, and the ones that are out of Yellowstone County typically have some sort of office or a satellite office here, so we're in direct contact.
So then, are the regulations that you're using to record that property the same in Gallatin County as they are in Golden Valley County, as they are in Roosevelt County, or do I have to know the rules for recording that property in each and every county in Montana?
There's 56 different counties. There's probably 56 ways that people do it. but there's statutes that we all got to follow.
Yeah.
We all got to get to A to Z. Or we, how we get to A to Z, who knows? But everything, all the legislative requirements have to be met in each county. So everybody should follow the same guidelines. How they do the reviews and how they, process these could be differently. But for the most part, I think they're very similar.
Sure. And then what have you seen? I know you're relatively active, I think, in the Clerk and Recorders Association. So you've probably seen it all from the big county, Yellowstone, Missoula, Gallatin, to the Golden Valleys or whatever, the Webos. And I imagine, I feel a little blessed that you have access to resources that a team from Minnesota can come out and digitize a bunch of documents that maybe those folks don't have access to. Do you work with some of those smaller counties to help them keep their records, and how are they doing on using technology to record these records? The smaller companies or smaller counties have challenges. Several years ago, the legislature had good foresight, and there's a certain percentage of a recording fee that gets dedicated to records preservation. So every recorded document, there's a little kitty that starts to collect funding. So these small counties over time do have access to some funds to do some digitizing and things like that. Of course, it's not nearly as it's a much smaller piece of the pie than, say, Yellowstone County. But overall, I think the last I heard, I think there's only one county that hadn't got up to speed on a digitized recording system. So out of 56 counties, that's pretty remarkable. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about, we've touched on this, but talk to us a little bit more about the pandemic. What did your office have to do? What precautions did you guys have to put in place? And, I don't think anyone would say, we made it through the pandemic swimmingly, but how'd you guys fare throughout the pandemic?
We didn't make it through swimmingly. We were like everybody else. No one knew the answers. We tried the best we could. What I decided early was I thought it was very important for our office to stay open. Through COVID, the real estate market in Yellowstone County has been going crazy. Mm-hmm. It'll be very difficult for me to figure out a way to delay the real estate industry, the banking industry, and things like that. We moved to a new office here 2 years ago, and the way we lay out, we were blessed that all of our staff members are at least 6 feet apart. So we're able to conquer that. As things went on, we followed the guidance of the governor's restrictions, Riverstone Health restrictions, and try to keep up to speed with that. Wore mask. We had sanitation products. Put up sneeze guards. Tried really, really hard to make sure that everybody was following the COVID policies. There was a time where we asked the public that to not come in unless it was critical business, because most of it could be done through ordering birth and death certificates through the mail. Title companies had to limit their exposure down there, but we never did entirely close. And on top of that, the electronic recording thing was a perfect timing. We had no idea that we were going to go through the COVID pandemic, but it worked out really well for the title companies because they didn't really have to be on site because they're our number one client. Yeah. So to say swimmingly, no, it was difficult. It was stressful. Yeah. The public was great. We didn't have, other than your normal daily issues, we didn't have many, but we've come around and we got through it, and hopefully we never have to go through that again. And like you said, and every industry's changed because of it. Yeah. We're set up well now, and we're going to keep some of the policies we set forth in COVID, and we're healthy. So.
Yeah. All right. Good deal. We've talked a lot about how much your office has modernized over the last 10 years or so. What's next? What's coming next? What do you see on the horizon that, hey, this is where we're going to have to go next to keep up with where the banking industry is going, where the title industry is going, where the real estate industry is going?
I think we're in a good spot right now. I think my concern right now, or not concern, and one of my goals is as we continue to digitize this, real estate's expensive, and the Yellowstone County is looking at what we're going to do in the next 10, 20 years as far as what kind of space needs we're going to have. Are we going to stay in the Stillwater building? Are we going to find a new location? If we do, how's that going to look? We know the court system's becoming overwhelmed, and the courthouse is likely going to turn into a full-fledged, courthouse. So I got to do I got to be diligent and make sure that I don't want to grow my footprint. I actually want to shrink my footprint and still allow public access, access to all records, meetings, things like that. So that's one of my goals in the next five years, is to kind of figure out how we can manage that footprint, because it is expensive. We're gonna adapt with the industry, and it's clear that it's become paperless. I mean, even the courts, the federal courts have become paperless.
Sure.
So there's no question that the clerk and recorder's office in the real estate world's gonna become paperless. But we're in a good spot to react to that, and I think we're getting there slowly.
Yeah. All right.
So.
Very good. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for coming down to visit with us, talking about the clerk and recorder's office. It's a lot more interesting than you would think if you hear the clerk and recorder's office, and I think a lot of people don't understand how important it is to have those underlying records somewhere where everybody can do it, and it's not important until the day you need them.
Right.
And so, thanks for all you do. Thanks for all your staff has done, and appreciate you coming down and visiting with us.
Thanks, Shoots.
You bet.